Okay, so we're going to work today a little bit more on the inventory system. If you can see here, I've added this empty spot down at the bottom. So what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to click on these things in the store, and I want it to load down there sort of like a detail view. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a sort of like a highlight to the menu items that have been selected. So let's hide the phone for now because we don't need that. And then we're going to come in here. So I've changed the way the inventory works. I reorganized the JSON and I changed the way that stuff gets loaded in so it's a little bit cleaner, a little bit more intuitive and easier to draw. So here I've already added the sprite to the sprite sheet and to the JSON file so it gets loaded in. So all we have to do is get that here. Actually, you know what? Let's do this in the loop so that we get a new copy for each inventory item, so that way it doesn't, when we mess with the frame, it doesn't mess up everything. Get asset highlight. And then let's add that to the here to the menu. So now when we add it to the inventory, we're going to give it the model. I also broke up inventory items into models and views, so that way it'll be a little bit better when we go to transfer that into the simulation, because we don't need to know anything about the view in the simulation. So now when I add it to the inventory, I give it an inventory item model, I give it the sprite so it can show the picture of that inventory item, and then I'm going to give it the highlight. So let's come in here to our inventory, and when we add an inventory item, we're going to give it another sprite that is going to be the highlight. So here we create the view, and I'm going to pass in the highlight. So now we need to go back and modify the inventory item view to take that highlight in and actually use it. Okay, just set that here. Highlight. Now we need to, equals highlight. Now we need to add that to this view. So here we're doing this with the sprite. We're going to want to do the same thing with the highlight. So we can set its anchor point and its position and then actually add it. And now when we run, let me bring the phone back up. When we run, now this should be drawn all the time, which is not what we want. Oh, and it's actually, in this case, it's going to be drawn on top of the sprite, so we just need to flip-flop these. Actually, we need to bring the highlight all the way up to the top, so it's drawn behind everything else. Okay. So now it's loading here. And go to the menu. Yeah, and we see that the highlight is showing. For some reason it's off-centered. So instead of changing this to center, I'm going to say that I want it anchored to the top left, and I want its pivot to be also the top left. We'll run that. Okay. So while that's loading, we can make sure that it's working. The next thing we need to be able to do is add the concept of a sprite being shown or hidden, so that we can turn this highlight on and off. It's also going to help us when we go to load the stuff down in the bottom, because we have a, it's still off. Interesting. Why is that off? Set position to 0, 0, top low. Oh, you know why? I probably messed it up in the sprite sheet. So let's go to GIMP and see what's going on. So here's our highlight. It starts, oh come on, it starts at 0 in the top and $17.82. Let's look at what we've got. So yeah, see there, 1782 and 0, and then it ends at, it should be 2100. 2100, yep, and the bottom should be 330. 318. Okay. 318. Alright, so now that should work. So let's run that. Okay, so like I was saying, we need to add the concept of a sprite, or movable object, I guess, being hidden or shown. We've already got that in the inventory, but now we need to have it as a more general feature. So I'm just going to add this to movable object so that anything can be hidden or shown, and we'll just default to being shown. So here in movable object, let's let that finish running. I'm not sure why this takes so long to build. Here we go. It's better. It's still a little off, but I think that might actually have something to do with the pixel scaling going from full size down to this size. So that's something I'm going to have to look into a little later. Let me write that down. Okay. So now let's hide the phone again and add this Boolean value for is shown. Actually, let's call it hidden, since shown is going to be the default state. Right? Yeah, shown is going to be the default state. So we'll add hidden, and then in draw, we'll just say if not hidden, then do all this. Okay. Now we can remove shown from here. Did I do that private? Let's make it protected so that other people can see it. And then say hidden is true, so we're going to default to being hidden. Here, let's move these up into movable object. Here, and we're going to need to change the sense of this. So if show is going to be hidden as false, and hide is going to be hidden as true. So this should default to being hidden. we don't need this anymore because that's taken care of in movable object. Handle click. Actually, we should do that here as well. So here we'll say if not hidden, then we'll be able to handle click. And then in either case, if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, we'll return false. So here I can get rid of that. Okay, so now in theory that doesn't change anything. So everything should be exactly the same. We've just moved who has responsibility for hiding and showing stuff. So let's make sure everything still looks the same, and then we can move on to defaulting those inventory model highlight sprites, or I'm sorry, inventory view highlight sprites to be off by default. Seems to be taking a lot longer to build. I've been watching Jonathan Blow's streams, and his compiler is so fast. Alright, so while that's building, let's assume that it works and go ahead and, oh, there it is. Yep, so the menu is defaulted to off. Cool. Okay, so now let's set, or hide. We'll hide that by default, so it's not showing. And then in here, we'll just add an action. What's it called? Set action. We'll set an action that just shows the highlight. Let's change that a little bit. I don't like having different methods for that. Let's just add a Boolean value. So here we can say public void set visible, and then we'll give it a Boolean value that is visible. And then in here we'll say hide hidden equals not visible. And then we'll say public Boolean is visible. Return not hidden. So we're going to have to change in our renderer I have to change these actions to say set visibility true in both cases. Okay. And then in our inventory view, our action is going to be set visibility not is visible. Should we be able to do that? We'll worry about that later. Cannot find hide. Okay. I feel like we should really be using the getters and setters for this instead of just accessing the parent variable. If this works, we'll change that. Now nothing shows up. Now nothing shows up. Oh, yeah. Ha! Shouldn't be that. It should be highlight.set visible false. And then on click, it should be highlight.set visible, not highlight. Yep, we're going to change that. Highlight is visible. Okay, so let's go to movable object, and we're going to make hidden private, which we should have done in the first place. Okay, so hidden is private. So here we're going to say set visible false. And then see if that works. Come on. Hey, there we go. Okay. So now we're turning the highlight on and off when we click on it. So the next step is going to be that we want to keep track of what is the selected item. So let's keep track of which one is selected in the inventory. So let's go to the inventory. I'm going to move that over here on the left. And it's going to be private inventory item view selected item. Okay. So now we're going to change our action a little bit. Let's bring the inventory item view over here. And instead of setting the action here, let's add a method to tell whether it's selected. And then here we'll just set the highlights visibility based on the selection. Okay. We still want need the inventory to know which item was clicked. So there are two ways we could do this. We could handle the click in the inventory and then iterate through all the children and see which one was clicked, if any. But that's already happening in movable object. It's already iterating through all the children, and we don't want to mess with that, really. So the other thing we could do is we could have the inventory view listen for its click and then notify its parent that it was clicked. Let's try that. So let's give this a reference to the inventory. And then we're gonna override set parent and call superset parent so that the movable object still knows that it's got a parent, and then we'll say inventory equals inventory parent. So now this thing knows who its parent is, and it has a reference to the inventory. Oh, but that's not true because it's inside of a frame. Okay, so that's not exactly what we want to do. Well, let's just pass it in the constructor. Make this final. And here. So that means here we need to say this. And then at the end, we can set action inventory dot item clicked this. So here public public void item clicked inventory item view item. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through each inventory item view in items, and we're going to set their selected to false. And then we're going to take the item that was clicked and set its selected to true. Okay, so that should turn off anything that was already selected and select this new thing. That doesn't let us click to like deselect something, but I don't think that's a huge deal. Because really all it's going to be doing is showing information down on the bottom panel. So like once you click something and it's selected, it's going to show the information for that thing, and it doesn't really matter. Yeah, okay. So now we're selecting. Oh, you can't see that, sorry. So if I click, we go through and we turn off other things, and then we just take the one that's been selected. Okay. So now, in addition to actually just like showing the state that that is the selected item, we should start to add stuff down to the bottom. Which I've not done yet. So I have this frame. So I have this thing called a detail frame, which is a frame layout, which renders, it basically just encapsulates that area down at the bottom. So we can add information to that frame to be able to update it when we select something. So let's do that. for now, we're just going to display similar. Let's bring up the model, actually. We're just going to display similar information to what's already in the cell with maybe like a little bit more detail. So we have the name, we have the category, we have the value, we have the cost, and the resale value. Currently, we're displaying the name, the value, and the cost. So we could add some more stuff to that. So let's, I mean, at the top, this is going to be a little weird. So top center, we'll create a, let's pull this out into a method. So that we can do this, and we'll do this down here. Oh, no, above those classes. Detail layout. So now we can create our text view. And by default, I have to actually give it some text. Maybe that's not great, because right now I don't know what to put in there. Let's call it unknown. We'll give it a font size, detail name dot set anchor. So its anchor is going to be top, middle, pivot is also going to be top, middle. Its position is going to be 0, and then we want to bring it down some. So, grid info dot cell padding. Cell padding is not the right thing here. So I'm going to make a note to add a padding value for the detail view. So we're going to move that down by padding, so it's going to be centered to the top, and then move down by the cell padding. Detail frame dot add child detail name. So now let's add the sprite to the left hand side. Well, that's weird. I don't have a way to just create a blank sprite. And I don't. So that, I mean, I'm just gonna have to copy it when I would like to be able to reuse as much of this as possible. And the text stuff I can. The text stuff I can totally reuse. You know what? Let's do this like the super hoggy way. So instead of worrying about being efficient right now, we're just going to do this the stupid, dumb way. So this is going to take an inventory item view, and then when we call set selected, we're going to create detailed layout. And pass in the item. So when we create detail layout, the first thing we want to do this is terrible. We are just wasting stuff. We are just wasting memory and processor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove all of the children that currently exist in the detail frame, so they are gone. So detail frame dot clear, and we're going to have to create this method because it doesn't exist. This is movable object. Add child, get children. Clear. So, in theory, that's going to take all of the children from the array and go through and garbage collect them. Remove all the elements from the list. The list will be empty after this file returns. So that should remove any references to those children as long as we don't keep them around anywhere else. And they should be garbage collected, which is absolutely not ideal, but whatever. Okay. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to get the detailed sprite equals item get sprite, and then we're going to do a deep copy of that because we need to be able to change its anchor and position and stuff, and we don't want that to mess up the version that we have in the grid. So detail sprite dot set anchor is going to be left, I keep forgetting, center left, set pivot will also be center left, set position, the X is going to be grid info dot cell padding and 0 in the Y because we want it inset from the side but in the center up and down. So let's add that to the detail frame. Let's leave it at that for now just so we can make sure this is working, and then we'll say up here on item clicked, we'll say detail frame dot set visibility true. And then by default, when we create the detail frame, we'll have it off. Okay, so in theory, this will go through and empty all of the children out of the detailed frame so that we can put more stuff in, which is a total waste, but that's what we're doing for now. And then add these two things. So what we should see is when we click on the two buttons, we should see the name of the thing change. Do I actually set the text? Oh, it says unknown. Okay, at this point we'll just see the sprite change because I messed that up. Okay. Ooh. Boom. Okay, so it crashed. Let's see why. Concurrent modification. Oh. So what's happened here is I click which is currently happening asynchronously. So that is in the middle of trying to remove objects when I also try to draw them. So I'm removing the children while trying to draw the children. Okay, so I'm going to make a note to handle clicks synchronously. And that's something that I thought to do anyway. I just haven't done it yet. Okay, so let's stay on track here. So this is working in like the worst way possible. So let's get model.getName. So that'll actually change the name. And then we're going to add information. Let's just go ahead and push this over to the right. And we want to show category. Why don't we show category up here? Let's do this. Let's do this in a, like, if we're going to make it bad, let's make it not so bad. String, title. Format. Name item dot get model dot get category dot name. Okay, and then here we'll just set this as the title. Okay, so we're displaying the name of the category. So off to the right, let's do the value, the cost, and the resale. So text detail value equals new text, and we're going to want a decimal format here. Let's just do it with string format. Percent dot 0.1 0.1 f item dot get model dot get value, and then what doesn't I like about that? Default locale. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so we're going to set that there. Detail name. I'm trying to think of what's the right way to do this. I'm going to try to sort of do it in the lower right hand corner. So I'm going to set this detail.set pivot bottom right, set anchor bottom right, detail name set position, and the X is going to be negative grid info dot cell padding, and the Y is also going to be negative grid info dot cell padding. And then I'm just going to add the other bits of text to this one. So text detail resale, comma, equals new text, and this is going to be item dot get model dot get resale. Value of that, and then I'm going to detail resale dot set anchor is going to be bottom, nope, it's going to be top right, and then its pivot is going to be bottom right, and then its position, X is going to be negative grid info dot cell padding, and Y is going to be same, negative grid info dot cell padding. And then I'm going to add this child detail resale. I'm going to do the same thing for cost. Cost. And then here I'm going to say detail resale dot add detail cost, and then detail frame dot add detail value. Okay, so let's see if that works. So what that should do is that should start in the lower right hand corner, and it should put the value in the lower right hand corner, and then the resale value right above that, and then the cost right above that. Or it crashes. Oh, it doesn't like my format string. So let's see what the so over here. %.2f. All right, so let's see if that fixes it. Okay, so that's not exactly what I expected. Why is the title down in the lower left? So title, detail name, Oh, detail name, that's why. Why am I adding all that to that? So detail value, and then this is detail value add child. This detail cost, detail resale add. Yeah. Man, that got all weird, didn't it? Okay, so there. So steak is food. Its value is 80. Its retail cost is, or resale value is 0, and its cost to buy is 90. Let's see if I can click on this without it crashing. Hey, okay. So that worked, which is cool. Need to format that a little bit better and work on the touch event stuff. And then add a button. So why don't we go ahead and add a button? I don't have a button class, so let's add one. I have a button bar. The thing is, you can click on any movable object. It doesn't have to be a button. But adding a button would just be a convenience thing for being able to display a background image with some text over top of that, and being able to toggle the state so we could have like a disabled, enabled, and pressed views. So let's go ahead and add a button. New class. Button. It's going to extend movable object, which means it needs to have the draw self method and have a constructor. Okay, so now it doesn't need a frame here because we can get the frame from the sprite. Default background. I'm going to call it normal sprite clicked pressed. Let's say pressed and disabled. And let's, here we'll say normal.getFrame. Let's add another constructor because I don't want to force people to have all three of those. So here we might not want disabled. So if that's the case, then it'll just be this normal pressed null. And we should probably also give them the choice to be super gross and not have a pressed. So if that's the case, then we'll just get rid of that. Okay. Either way, we're going to want some text. I don't know why I keep typing test instead of text. I do that all the time. Okay. So let's keep track of our sprites. And we're going to have we don't really need, we might as well keep it around. We're going to have our text that is going to be our text. Okay. So here we're going to say normal is normal, pressed is pressed, and disabled is disabled. Let's look at our frame layout here for a second. So this doesn't do anything on draw self. So in our draw self, okay, we'll get to that. So here, we're just going to want to set all these so that they're in the top left corner. Set pivot, top left, normal dot set anchor, top left, normal set position 0, 0. And we want to do this so that when we draw ourselves, it's going to fit our frame. So we have a frame that's going to be the size for the image, and we just want the image to completely fill that frame. Set visible, well, it's going to be visible by default, right? So here we'll just turn off pressed. If it's not null. Right, because if we allow them to not set this, then we have to check that. Same thing here. Okay. And we want to add that, add child normal, add child pressed, add child disabled. Okay, so here I'm just gonna grab this debug drawing stuff from frame layout to put in here, so it will let us draw a circle or a box around it if we want to. Normal pressed. Okay. So now we need to set the text, right? Yeah. Okay. and we want to draw the text on top of all that, so we'll do that at the end. So text equals new text, the text they set in. We're going to set the text dot anchor, or let's do pivot first. Pivot is going to be center, nope, just center. Text dot anchor is going to be center. Text position is going to be 0, 0. We just want it dead center on the thing, and then we're going to add child text. Okay. So let's go back to GIMP here, and we'll figure out how we want our buttons to look. You know what? I'm just going to, for now, use this thing. So that's our money frame. I'm going to duplicate this layer, drag it down so that it's butted right up against that one. And do that again. Okay, and you know what? Do that again so we don't actually mess with this. So let's duplicate this layer. So now we have these three that we can play with. I'm actually going to move them over. There, right? Let's set up a thing. Guide, there we go. Okay, so that, and this one. Okay. So now let's take this one here. But that goes off the edge. Crap. Okay. Move them all back. Let's put them over here. This, oh. This, nope, that. Okay. So there's this, then that, that. Okay. So now we have our three. Let's call this button normal, button pressed, and this we'll call button disabled. Okay, so button normal we'll just leave white. Button pressed we will make gray. Darken. I'll set opacity like way down. We'll just, nope. Too low? Nope. What's going on here? Do I have something selected? Yep, alright. Darken only, opacity way down. Let's darken it up a little so it's obvious when we press on it. Okay, and let's do normal, change this to red so that we know it's disabled. And we're going to click on disabled. Nope. Shoot. Addition. It's only adding in the black. That's because red's all the way up. Multiply. There we go. Okay, so we'll export that. App, source, main, assets, menu. Don't say the background color. Come on. Okay, and then we will save this. And then let's come back in here. We'll open our assets JSON. And we need to add 3 things. So this is going to be button normal, button pressed, and button disabled. Button normal, all their lefts are 1320. And all of their rights are 1602. Button normal's top is 180. And they're all 60. Let me make sure. Coin frame 180, yeah, 60 pixels wide. No, yeah, 60 pixels wide, or tall. So do 180 plus 60 is 240. I know I should be able to do that in my head, I just don't. And then this is going to be 360. Okay. So we've added those in. So now let's go back to our inventory. And let's make a new button. First, we're going to have to get those sprites. So we're going to do asset loader. Sprite normal equals assets dot get asset button normal sprite pressed assets dot get button pressed. Disabled equals assets dot get set button press or disabled. Okay, so now we're going to make a button. Button equals new button, normal pressed disabled, and buy this. Okay, we're going to say button dot set pivot bottom middle, button dot set anchor bottom middle, button dot set position 0 in X and minus grid info dot cell padding for Y, and then detail frame dot add child button. Okay, so we're not changing the state of the button based on anything. We haven't added an action to the button to actually do something on click. But it should at least show up. Okay, so something is wrong. I think I messed up the... Well, no. Why is that? Did I mess... Button normal. So highlight. It's getting... Oh, 2100. Oh! That's way off. Right? So this should be 1602. I thought we said 1602. Didn't we? Did I overwrite that? Yeah, I must have overwritten that. The height looks messed up too, though. So let's look at that. Starts at 180. Starts at 180 and goes to 240. 180 to 240. Yeah, okay. So getting the frame from the sprite when it's loaded. Normal get frame. Let's set a breakpoint and see what that is. Oh, no, this is old. Breakpoint. Okay. So here, normal frame is 212 by 45, which makes sense. 212 by 45. That makes sense. So this button is going to be 212 by 45. Then we set the normal pivot to top left, with position 0, and then we add that to this. Do we have our debug stuff on? Okay, so let's turn on our debug rendering. See what we get. So I've built in this flag in the Gradle file so that we can turn on debug rendering. It's an easy way to just have like a global constant variable, basically. The cool thing is, because it's static final, it will be compiled out. So if I turn this off, all of my debug code gets compiled out, so it doesn't actually make it into the final executable. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a runtime check for this stuff. Okay, so the button is pink down here. But the rect of the sprite is off. So the button looks correct, the text looks correct, but the sprite is wrong. Okay. So let's set a breakpoint here. Set a breakpoint here and see why. See if we can see what our frame is at this point in the frame of our children. Okay. Turn that off. Okay. So here we are trying to draw a button. Our frame we know looks correct. So for normal, we expect its frame Yep. Okay. So what's happening is, obviously, frame is a reference type. So when we say that we are setting our frame to be the frame of the normal sprite, that's a reference. So when we adjust our frame, we're also adjusting the frame of the normal sprite, which means that we are getting that weirdness. So what we have to do is we have to do new rectf normal get frame left normal get frame top. We can't. Normal get frame right, nope, right, normal dot get frame bottom. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to create a new rect from all of the same information. Can I just pass that rect in, actually? Let's see if we can just do that. That would be way easier. Yeah, okay, so we're creating a new rect that has all the same values as the rect from the normal sprite. It's just not the same one, right? It's not a reference to that one, so we can adjust our frame and not mess up the frame of the sprite. There we go. Okay. So now let's turn off our debug rendering so it doesn't look weird. Oh, interestingly, notice before this goes away that we don't actually have to add the padding to these texts down at the bottom because they're all relative to the one below it. So the padding is already baked into that. So let's go remove that now before we forget. So we do this for the value, but not these two. Nope, that's not true. We want to change the y, but not the x. Because we want the x to be the same, and we want the y to move up. Okay. It's gone away. Okay, so that should keep them from stepping in. We should keep them nice and in a row. So if this works, I think that's where I'm going to stop the stream. I have stuff on my list to go back and do. Yeah, cool. Okay, so now those are all lined up in the lower right-hand corner. Our button is all centered up, which is nice. So I need to handle button states. Add action to click on button. Go back and make touch handling asynchronous and look into that highlight size. Okay. So I'm gonna do those things, clean this up, make it look a little nicer, fix the full capitalization on the category there because it looks weird. So we'll just make that a nice human readable string. Cool. All right. Thank you all for joining the stream. Catch you next time.